tough spring break trip. Good morning. My name is Kathy Thunheim. And I'm going to kick things off here this morning very briefly. I was honored to be asked to play a part in identifying and recruiting the next commissioner for Minnesota's IT department. To be clear, my own expertise is not in IT. The people who know me well could testify to that. But my role was to recruit a professional team of people who do have the appropriate areas of expertise and perspective, and then to guide a process that would enable us to evaluate candidates from a strong pool of more than a couple dozen applicants. I think it's important to note, too, that there was a lot of thought to how to approach the process of recruitment and selection and how that should relate to the reviews that are underway relative to MNIT and relate to the Blue Ribbon Commission that was separately established by executive order. There was overlap, and you'll hear this in a minute, between the panel, some of my members of the panel, I should say, and participation in the Blue Ribbon Council, and that's on purpose. We're trying to bring both perspective from the public sector and private sector expertise to address the ongoing challenges and the future for MNIT. So first, I want to thank Governor Walz for the opportunity to be of service. Second, I want to thank the panelists for their commitment of significant time over a compressed calendar and their full engagement in the process. Some of them are here, not all are here. I think they're all identified in the press materials, but I'm going to ask them each to just step up and share their name and their affiliation so you have that information. You guys want to, Chuck, you want to start?
Good morning, Chuck Johnson. I serve as Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Human Services.
Hi, I'm Ed Clark from the University of St. Thomas. I'm the CIO there.
Good morning. My name is Bernie Galachik from the University of Minnesota. I'm the Vice President, Chief Information Officer there.
Good morning. My name is Eric Hallstrom. I'm a Deputy Commissioner at Minnesota Management and Budget.
Good morning. I'm Jay Sickink. I'm from Crow Wing County, and I'm here representing the county organizations.
Thanks, Jay.
Good morning. I'm Richard Kajinski, the Public Affairs and Communications Director from the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees.
As I say, the other members who are not able to be here are, I think, listed in your material, but two that I would specifically call out who were very active in the panel. One was Rick King, who is also going to be continuing now as the chair of the Blue Ribbon Council, and Teresa Wise, who's also been involved in the MNLARS review. So again, the overlaps were intentional to try to make sure we brought as full an understanding of the situation that MNIT has been facing and faces as we made a selection. We were very, very pleased with the caliber of professionals who are seeking this important position. We're confident and enthusiastic to see Tarek Tomes accept the appointment and want to congratulate him and thank you again for your attention. Thank you, Governor. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. A thank you to Kathy Thunheim for leading up this effort. Very instrumental and involved in Minnesota and civic life for a long time, and someone who assembled a panel of experts. The issue of technology and the issue of making sure that Minnesotans can trust the technology in their government is paramount. We made that clear, and as Lieutenant Governor said a few minutes ago, kind of breathing a sigh, we finally have a team put together. We were very deliberate in going about looking at this because of the impact that it touches every single Minnesotan, the impact from cybersecurity threats we're facing to just the basic convenience of getting your driver's license renewed or getting a hunting license, whatever it may be. That interaction needs to be, it needs to be friendly. It needs to be effective. It needs to be secure. And the leadership of this organization, as we started to look, this is very challenging. It's challenging in the private sector. And at this time, I would like to point out the acting or the interim commissioner at MNIT, Bill Poirier. Bill came about a year ago. He was not involved in much of the decisions that were made, or any of them, especially dealing with MNLARS. Bill came from a career in the military and the private sector and has done incredible work in very challenging circumstances of trying to right the ship of MNIT and trying to start to reestablish trust across the enterprise, and especially with the legislature, and a Republican legislature that was rightfully I think, frustrated and rightfully resistant to making some of the changes. He was able to help together to work that through. We think that the MNLARS situation has been stabilized. It allowed us to get our feet on the ground and start to get some transparency and some third-party validation of what's happening there, to establish the outside panels that will take a look. All of those things happen. So, Bill, on behalf of the state of Minnesota, thank you for stepping up to a really difficult challenge, and you did it with great honor. So thank you for that. And I think what this team did, and Bill's work, and the employees that are over at MNIT and in each of our agencies, laid the groundwork now for a new era to open up, one that is based on transparency, competency, vision, and results and effectiveness. And it's with great pleasure today that we're announcing Tarek Tomes to be the MNIT Commissioner. Tarek has 25 years of private sector IT experience. He's worked in the office. He's worked in government sector, private sector. His leadership from British Telecom to being the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of St. Paul repeatedly demonstrated a commitment to developing and delivering customer service-focused technology, and I can't stress that's enough. That's what Minnesotans should expect from their government. That's what they should expect from the technology that we're employing, and that's what Tarek brings. He has served over there, as I said, at MNIT as an assistant commissioner, and he comes with some knowledge of the agency. To be clear, when I put out and asked Kathy and her team, they said, what are you looking for? I'm looking for someone who has a deep knowledge of technology. I'm asking for someone that has deep understanding of how to turn cultures in an organization. I'm looking for visionary leadership for what's over the horizon. I'm looking for someone who has the political skills to be able to work with a legislature and a divided legislature. And their response back to me was, if we find that unicorn, we'll send them right over to you. I think they came awful close to doing that with Tarek. That experience and what he's shown, and I think each of us, when he comes in, you feel the sense of excitement, you feel the sense of vision. And a statement that got made to me by several different people, and I think Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and myself felt like this, is after the interview I had with Tarek and the opportunity to sit in there, I remember thinking, I would like to work for this person. This is somebody who inspires me to a vision. The competency is very clear, and it's someone whose openness to hearing from the people who work there and from the constituents and the customers he serves is simply something exactly what we were looking for. So at this time, it's a great pleasure for Lieutenant Governor and myself to introduce to you our next Commissioner of MNIT, Tarek Tomes.
Good morning. As the governor has mentioned, my career in technology exceeds 25 years. I started my career in Germany, and this is the first press conference that I've ever done for a job. So this is unbelievable. I want to thank Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, the Chief of Staff and Deputy Chief of Staff, for having the confidence and trusting me to be a part of this incredible team. The question has been asked frequently, why would I want to do this? And it's really not that complicated. The governor actually just said it in his office a little while ago. The opportunity to serve and make an impact with an organization that provides such vital functions that can really change outcomes for so many people is an incredibly rewarding opportunity, and it's an incredibly humbling opportunity. I look forward to meeting my fellow cabinet members, meeting the leadership team, meeting the legislature and legislators to really understand the needs of this organization and to help articulate a common vision for moving forward. I'd like to thank the interview panel, the folks that spent a lot of time both in the actual interview process as well as ahead of time going through applications. One of the things that's clear with this position, if you think about, wow, this is a really difficult position that has a lot of complexity associated with it, one of the things that becomes very clear is you're not alone. And the interview process and the folks that were willing to participate in the interview process from both the private sector, from county perspectives, from employee perspectives, certainly private sector perspectives, the work of the Blue Ribbon Council, the work of the leadership team here, the legislature. you're not alone in this position, and there are going to be a lot of people that are really, really interested in making sure that this organization is successful. I have a little bit of a difficult time with the term successful because I don't think successful is good enough for Minnesotans. I think this organization has to thrive. I think we have to continually look to be bold with the opportunities that we can bring forth. There's no more exciting time in technology than the present time. Everything that has happened in technology up to this time is really dwarfed by the capabilities that technology will continue to provide to transform our lives moving forward. To the 2,300 incredible employees at the organization, they provide technology solutions that are amazing every day. A portfolio that includes 2,800 applications, hundreds and hundreds of projects that are successfully delivered every year, literally millions of transactions that are facilitated by reliable technology services. And one of the things that's really, really important is that we are bold with our innovative approaches to how we can make things better via the use of technology. We have to make sure that we instill a culture where we're not scared to fail. Certainly, some of the project outcomes have been, very, very public. But we have to instill a culture where, as technologists, we're bold with the vision that we set forth, that we articulate the risks, that we are really broad with the awareness of where we are, but that we're not afraid to fail. And if we put the processes and methodologies in place, which we don't have to invent, which exist in the marketplace in general, we'll make sure and assist our 2,300 employees of doing and continuing to do the amazing things that they do. Lifting up the digital estate within our digital workplace here is really, really important. 2,800 applications across the various agencies, boards, and commissions. That literally equates to probably billions of transactions per day that traverse our state government landscape, and lifting up that digital estate and providing meaningful information and data so that decisions can be made quicker, decisions can be made in a more meaningful way to help make successful outcomes for Minnesotans is a tremendous opportunity. There are tremendous challenges. Some of the challenges are not unique to this organization. Every technology organization in the world is certainly under a heightened alert as it relates to cybersecurity threats. And with consistent resources and funding, we will continue to be able to lower the risk posture of the state. It carries with it an understanding that at times we have to minimize our exposure. At times we have to make sure that our ability to respond to events is faster. But we're not alone in that either. Every organization in the world is continuing to increase prerequisite funding to make sure that the state's digital assets are appropriately secured. Modernization of critical systems presents a challenge, but yet an opportunity as well. When we have systems that are 10 and 15 years old, frequently we have business processes that are 10 and 15 years old, and they represent amazing opportunities to reimagine how we do things, to reimagine how we provide those services assisted by technology solutions. So not just lifting an existing system into a newer system, but really reimagining how those services can be provided and the digital impact that those services can have. Strengthening connections between state, city, county government to make sure that the ability to share data and information allows each one of the municipalities, each of the county locations, each of the state locations to provide services as efficiently and effectively as possible. I'm incredibly excited to be a part of this team. I certainly want to thank Mayor Coleman, former Mayor Coleman, and Mayor Carter for their leadership. I've learned a ton from them. I'd like to thank the former deputy mayors at the city of St. Paul as well for just their vision and being incredibly supportive of the things that we were able to do in those positions. I'd also like to thank my oldest son, Adrian Kame. I'd like to thank him for coming, Dr. Tomes. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, Tarek, thank you. This appointment goes into effect Monday, April 29th, as he'll come on the job as he transitions over. At this time, we'd like you to Instagram, text, or FaceTime your questions to us. So, test all of you, and see how well that all works. But we're glad to answer questions and certainly grateful you're all here. This is an important appointment.
Commissioner, you're entering a department that with a lot of controversy over the last couple of years, cybersecurity, MNLARS, outdated equipment, some problems with MNSure. Other than that, welcome. What do you go after first? What do you think is the most important issue here?
You know, I think the most important thing is establishing relationships, is making sure that we establish relationships, not just with my peers, but with members of the legislature, to really understand the opportunities and the challenges that this organization faces. I think there is certainly an opportunity to continue much of the work. I should go back a little bit. I did want to thank Commissioner Poirier for the work that he's done, and all of the previous commissioners for the work that they have done. They have all moved technology innovation with the state of Minnesota forward, and they should be thanked. We live in a world from a technology perspective where certainly, you know, we don't always benefit from the hindsight of 2020, but that is a part of what we do. But I think there are process and methodology opportunities that allow our workers to be successful, that allow for a much broader awareness of where we are in delivering both small and large projects to raise the likelihood of success. I think MNLARS, for example, if we look at 2017 going forward, I think there are a tremendous amount of lessons that should be applied to future technology initiatives for the successes that initiative has had from 2017 going forward. And certainly there's a lot to be learned from 2017 forward, and bringing that commonality of methodologies and approaches will be really important.
Oh, please, Governor.
I was just going to mention as we were talking about this, and Tarek has a great way of distilling this down, letting me think about this. It's really interesting to think about this, that we didn't even have the Apple iPhone until the second term of Governor Paulini. So it's been Governor Dayton and then us. Governor Dayton was the first one when Twitter was out there, if you will, and all the others. So the rapidly changing focus on this is I wanted to see, and I think Tarek done a really nice job of, these lessons learned are really, really important, and then what's over the horizon? How do we anticipate? So please.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Tomes, you said something interesting I want to explore a little bit further. You said we don't want to be afraid to fail. And I assume that means that if you fail, you would acknowledge the failure and then move over to success or thriving, I think was the term that you used. Correct? In the context of MNLARS, what's your openness? Because there are a lot of calls here to possibly outsource this to private vendors, off-the-shelf, customized for the state. What's your attitude on that moving forward, on MNLARS specifically?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Probably very premature for me to comment on. There's a report from the Blue Ribbon Council that I think is going to really highlight potential opportunities and give us another perspective. And I think it would be important to wait for the outcome of that report.
Let me ask this a little further, and I'll be blunt about this. And back in the early days, I was in IT myself, back in the time-sharing days.
Yeah.
Way back.
Just yesterday.
And if I were to put myself in some of your employees' places, right, about the possibility of outsourcing this, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure not to do that. And I think the governor would acknowledge that there'll be pressure not to do it. My question is, if indeed the determination is that the prudent thing to do is to outsource this, what are you going to do about that?
Well, we won't work in a vacuum. We'll make the best decisions in the best interests of Minnesotans and the people that use these systems. One of the things that's going to be, incredibly important is always to keep people in the center of these solutions. And so we won't make those decisions in a vacuum, but we will make the most prudent decisions, even if they're difficult decisions, to make sure that the services that are provided by MNLARS, for example, are successful, not just today, but that we also have a vision and a roadmap for the future.
You said you can't be afraid to fail. Failure in your job looks bad. This is your first press conference. You'd be doing more of them. You'd have lawmakers hauling you over. Explain that, because I think to us, the fear of failure motivates government.
Yeah, I don't think for technologists, the fear of failure doesn't mean that you're going to fail. The fear of failure means that you may not bring forth the appropriate solutions to change people's lives for a tremendously conservative approach. And I think it's prudent upon us to bring all perspectives and make sure that our business partners are at the table so that we can decide the appropriate risk posture related to the technology solutions and innovations that we're putting forth. So not being afraid to fail, and I think MNLARS is a great example, right? No one is more devastated, or the state, the 2,300 state IT workers are as devastated as anyone by the very, public issues that MNLARS has had. And we want to make sure that they don't retreat. We want to make sure that they're not afraid to continue to put forth bold solutions. And we have to make sure, from a leadership perspective, that we have the processes and methodologies in place to support decisions and also protect them.
If I could, I would just answer on that. It's a great question, and it kind of goes with Bill, too, this idea. In the business world, and this has been around for the last decade or so, almost becomes cliche to a certain degree, but it speaks volumes about the culture in organizations. Fail fast has been a term, fail fast, which means don't be afraid to innovate, but if it's not going that way, change course correctly. Government is very risk adverse. Government has to be very risk adverse because of this, because their funding is going to be cut or something would happen. It goes to what the question Bill asked is that I'm being very clear about this. I am agnostic on where the solutions come from. To be clear, I'm on that. If this blue ribbon panel comes back and all of the evidence points to, we're going to assess that, and my commissioner who has the best knowledge possible is going to assess that. I'm one in the United States Congress that was leading the charge for the dozen years I was there and finally got it done to unify the DOD's and the VA's medical records, and that ended up being an off-the-shelf that went away from the VISTA system that was in-house developed by the VA, and it went to the Cerner system off that. Now, it'll yet to be seen. That's going to be the biggest technological integration in U.S. government history. It's going to be about $20 billion stretched over 7 to 10 years. So this is a very complex process. There will be failures, and when you hear the commissioner say that, the idea is if we're leaning into this, trying to find real solutions, this happens every day in business. It was really difficult. And once we get in a track, we cannot get out of that thing. And that's what happened with MNLARS, that it continued to go on. We're trying to change the culture and say, no, take a different tack. Go at this. Look at this. And this report that comes in May 1st is meant to do exactly that. Should we continue on, and what are the resources needed to make that system fully functional, both the FAST system on licenses and MNLARS? And if it comes back, they're going to give some options to the commissioner, and then the commissioner will make that decision in part of a leadership team. And I just want to be clear about that. We're agnostic. The solutions will come from, they're people-centered, as the commissioner said, and we want to get people this idea that let's lean out a little bit. Let's be thoughtful on this, because the worst thing is to die a slow death and not tell anybody about it and have it come out the way it did. So the culture's already changing. You're seeing this right away. When there's anything, whether it's cybersecurity, data breach, whether it's a problem in a program that's not on schedule, we have folks stepping up and talking about that right now. And that's happening. So I know we will be in this room where we will have a technology piece that's not going as planned. There may be a cost overrun. I think the thing you can expect is it will not have to come out an investigative report, and when we come in front of you, there'll be a plan to fix it already laid out.
Some legislators want to get rid of MNIT altogether. What is your argument to keep it?
I think having a strong, thriving technology organization is essential for successful state government. It's essential to provide the services that Minnesotans require. In a world where that doesn't exist, the experiences and lessons learned from a MNLARS are learned in silos, and the likelihood of repeat is really, exponential across the number of organizations that have those types of projects and initiatives. We have an ability to make sure that we strive for process excellence. When we have a workforce this big, with this many transactions, with this many technology environments that have to be protected, we really have just a wonderful opportunity to derive and build on processes and methodologies to make sure that we're successful. It's essential.
We have time for one more question before general Q&A.
The previous governor said that what kept him up at night was cybersecurity, intrusions on Minnesota data. How secure is Minnesota's system right now?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to put the commissioner on the spot because I think the commissioner, and one thing I've noticed about him is the thoughtful approach to this. Yes, I would agree with that assessment that it keeps me up at night too. I think our systems are secure, but they are not impenetrable, just like no system is, whether we see Wells Fargo down or we see our voting system. We have to continue to put this at the forefront. It's clear that those who wish to cause either direct damage, whether financial gain or whether it's straight trying to undermine our system, will can try to do that. We get thousands and thousands of attempted breaches every single day that are trying to attack our system, and that's why it has to be robust. One of the things that I think it's hard for legislators to understand is that you just asked for money for this 2 years ago. Yeah, but the bad guys have gotten better at it. They have new tools. Our defenses need to come up more. We need to be more thoughtful. So I have confidence in the system. I have confidence with where MNIT was at. I would not, though, tell people that just like any agency, it is not foolproof. We need to get better every single day, and especially that critical data. So I am confident that we're protecting that, but the waiting, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, every other state has protected their election system except for Minnesota doing better. Now, it is solid. Secretary of State Simon feels confident, but the threats are there. In fact, the threat was so great that in a bipartisan manner, the federal government gave us $6.5 million to use, and that is now frozen in politics in the Senate. So give us the tools, and our commissioners will lead it, but I feel confident we're putting the commissioner in a safe spot. One of the things is, though, is that I'm getting constant feedback about where the potential breaches are, where the potential soft spots are, and ways that we work around that.
One more question,
Yeah, we'll do
Commissioner, please.
Sure.
That one,
Give us the last one.
Thank you. Commissioner, fundamentally, unlike in the private sector, government IT is beholden, is governed by statutes. And a lot of people in your position have talked about how tricky that can be to write code that has to answer to statutes that are unique to Minnesota. Some people have suggested changing the whole process, that recommendations come from IT first, and then maybe statutes are written in response. What is your philosophy on how that works?
I think it's a relationship. I think having a strong relationship with the legislature that makes sure that the statutes are written in a way that they're as beneficial as possible to deliver sustainable, secure technology services is essential.
Folks, we're going to wrap there, and the governor will be around for some general Q&A in just a couple of minutes.
I would like to, and thank you, Commissioner. Thanks to all the folks who put this together. And Kathy, thank you for your leadership once again. I would just follow up while you're getting shifted here and on this question. This is actually a really important question, because I got asked, why don't we just use Wisconsin's system or whatever? Because Minnesota's laws are different. And when the laws are different, the functionality of those applications are different. And I think the answer is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this appointment with Tarek is that the idea that there is that relationship of building the trust. And if we have this right, before the legislature does something that is going to impact one of our software systems, there's at least enough communication happening that they say, what are the implications of this going to be? And whether it's a new piece that we're proposing, for example, paid family leave, what does the software system look like to administer and maintain paid family leave? So from our perspective, Lieutenant Governor and I, in our budget, we asked for a deep dive on that, and I said, we can't get that wrong. What's it going to cost? So our budget doesn't actually address what paid family leave will look like. It addresses the technology requirements only, if they're going to emplace that. So it is relationship.
Governor, now that you've filled this vacancy, could you just reflect a little bit on your cabinet as a whole?
Yeah, sure.
And what do you think the team looks like, it feels like,
And thank you for asking the question, because I'm really proud of the team we put together, and I want to use this as an opportunity to thank my partner, and you often see this, it's not by mistake that we are seen together side by side with Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, was in charge, if you remember clear back, it seems like a lifetime ago, the One Minnesota Transition Team that put together the hiring teams, that put together the pool of candidates that let me select. And this was an example of that. This was a lengthy process. A lot of these folks up here, their reputations preceded them, but I didn't personally know them. The three candidates they put in front of me, I did not know. I personally did not know them. So all of the questions that were asked and all of the packets that were presented to us before we did the final interviews, where the three finalists sat down with Lieutenant Governor and myself, was so encouraging to me that I think we went out there and provided that. And when that team is all together, the diversity of experience, the feedback we're getting, whether I'm hearing about each and every one of them, what they're doing, they're out taking hearings out to Stillwater Prison, that we've got a Google executive that's working with us, that we have a housing expert that worked in the federal government, understands those programs. Across each of these commissioners, one of the things was that I knew specifically there is no way that you can hire the person to do this job that knows all of these things. But we can set that vision of servant leadership, hire the people with the expertise to serve that, and then multiply out from there. And the way that our organization works is we empower these commissioners to build those relationships and works. And for me, the best feedback I get is when these commissioners are out there solving problems. We had a situation in Mankato with wastewater treatment and river quality that had been brewing and was pretty much on the verge of a lawsuit between the city and the state. And our commissioner of MPCA, Commissioner Bishop, was down there working with them, many people that I knew personally because I lived there, and worked out a solution that not only cleans the water but works financially for the city of Mankato to build out. So my impression is that I hired really, really talented people, and a lot of the skill set that was demanded of them was the capacity to build trust and relationships. You heard Tarek, you'll hear each of them talk about this. He has got to get the trust of Senator Newman when it comes to MNLARS. And Senator Newman gave us and reached out and gave us the money to work on MNLARS to get the fix. He required that we do a review, and he wants to be there and made some suggestions that we need to have somebody from the outside coming in to do this, that we listen to. So I'm enthusiastic, I'm encouraged, I'm hopeful, and I think for me to understand the most important job of an administration, first and foremost, was to populate those agencies with talented public servants who serve the people of Minnesota. Not me and not this administration, but Minnesotans.
The president yesterday, and he made fun of the New York Times to state his point, said some folks, a fair number of folks are saying, gee, my tax bill went down or I got a bigger refund in that. And I suspect that's probably true for some folks. How, in that context, do you move forward with your proposal for increasing taxes in some areas?
Yeah, well, I think what gets lost in this, keep in mind that I have called for $500 million in tax reductions, both on Social Security, small businesses, and other things that we're doing. What we see is that the president's tax bill, the bulk of it, went to about the top 10% of folks. That I get this. This is an ideological trickle-down economic theory that says you give it to the wealthiest, it'll come down. We know what we got is we have a $20 trillion deficit. We have a $20 trillion debt. We have a $1 trillion deficit that was all the way down to $159 billion and was headed for zero under the previous administration. So what we got was an infusion of cash into an economy that at the time we were already going, certainly wasn't seeing large wage increases amongst folks, certainly weren't seeing a lot of investments in things that will grow that long-term economy. So the president gave these tax cuts away and then comes back to us and tells us we're going to have to cut education, we're going to have to cut workforce training, we're not going to be able to get a transportation bill done, we're not going to be able to invest in the future. And so my response to them is that there are a whole lot of people who have seen this type of bill done before. I don't doubt that there are a few people that benefited. I simply don't see where cutting back on Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, investments in job training and education and research benefits us in the long run, even though we saw a lot of large corporations benefit greatly. So what Minnesota is going to do is we're going to reset this. This is where you are going to see Minnesotans who are in the middle class receive some relief from the federal tax bill and a balancing on terms of those who saw the biggest cuts. We're now down to a 21% federal tax, a corporate tax rate. I don't think that we need to see another one on top of that when we're already seeing the benefits that apparently, as he said, they're working greatly. Here in Minnesota, we know we can do better for the middle class.
Did you get to have a conversation with the Chief Information Officer here in Call about this selection for MNIT? Is he expected to stay at the agency?
Decisions have not been made at this time, and so we want to make sure we put the commissioner on good standing where we empower these commissioners to make some of those choices, who they populate around them. We certainly are aware and involved in that conversation, but it's being led from the commissioner.
Are there any thoughts about the loss in Paris?
Yeah, and certainly our thoughts and just deepest sympathies, and certainly with not having a loss of life was one thing, but I think all of us, and those of us who have had the privilege of being in Notre Dame before, the historical loss of this is immeasurable. I think the good news is it sounds like the basic structure has been saved, but it shows that common humanity, it shows that culture. When you see that, and I remember, and certainly it was made to be that way when you walked in front of it, how small you felt as a person. What we do when we work together can be that great and lasted so many years. So it's a tragic situation. Certainly, I think some pretty heroic efforts to save what we were able to save. And I think the reports that I was seeing this morning is a lot of the internal treasures were saved, and firefighters were, I think, quite literally pulling them off the wall and running to get them out of there. So pretty tragic.
The President, yesterday's visit was an official visit, but there was a lot of politics discussed at this business roundtable, including repeatedly talking about how he believes he's going to win Minnesota in 2020. Now, you and the Lieutenant Governor have been around the state most recently. What's your sense of how people are feeling? Because many people didn't vote for you.
Yeah, I do remind people that in an off-year election, the Lieutenant Governor and myself got more votes than the President. So the world, and that has never happened. So Minnesota from 2016 to Minnesota to 2019 is quite different. I think the constant drama, the constant, drama that surrounds every single thing is wearing on people. I think southern Minnesota farmers are about at wit's end. We're not seeing any movement on trade deals. We now have disaster relief being held up with what's happening with Puerto Rico. So there's just a lot of things that they see could function better. It's my take on this is that Minnesotans want to see effectiveness. Minnesotans do not want to see the harsh language. I think it's a pretty uphill road for the president to think they're going to win Minnesota.
What was your conversation with him like yesterday?
It was very productive, and I do want to in this thank the president for this. Certainly, I'm out there in my role as the chief executive of the state of Minnesota to greet the president of the United States to our state. The president asked me very graciously to come up and meet with him in his office, and he proactively, he was of course watching, and I had not seen the news yet, expressing his horror at the fire in Paris, and then he turned and he said, "I got your letter on disaster relief," which was very impressive to me, and I'm very grateful for on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota. He said, "We'll work on that." He had Secretary Mnuchin come in, and then he had Congressmen Hagedorn and Stauber and Emmer come in. He said, I hear Tim's a good guy. You think we can help him out?" And they all laughed, and they said, of course, they said the governor's working on, the flooding situations all across all of our districts, and the recent storm last week does warrant this. He expressed his desire to get that done and to help us out, and it was just the way it should be. That was the focus of the conversation. Made it clear it was very bipartisan. Certainly, my successor in Congressman Hagedorn expressed his trust that we were doing this right, that we had all the best interest in heart, and he was advocating for the president. So that's what the...
When you have an audience like that, one-on-one with the president, were you tempted to say anything else that might be on your mind about the way he speaks, your thoughts on him?
Well, I think those of you who know me, I'm always tempted to say things, I think is probably fair to say, but I also think that it's my responsibility, if I really talk about this, to bring decorum back to conversations. I don't think that was the right setting where my job is to advocate in the immediate interest of Minnesotans, some who are without power, as the president and I were speaking, to try and advocate for those, the things that we can do. You only get a little bit of time, so you need to be very thoughtful. The president's proactively bringing it up to me is incredibly encouraging. That's what he wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk about disaster relief for Minnesota, which I have to tell you, if I would have had any advice or wanted to say anything, stay in that space. Stay in the space on trade. Stay in the space on transportation. Stay in the trade on disaster relief. And so I think it's important. These are difficult. I make no doubt about that, I've been very candid that I disagree strenuously with many of the president's positions. I've also said that I think it's my responsibility to not normalize things that shouldn't be normalized. But I think when there's an opportunity to show what normal relationships and respectful relationships look like with the President of the United States, the governor of the state of Minnesota, and our local officials who were asking me to make sure. I was in Austin on Saturday when we flew down there, setting with local officials, setting with people that had power out, setting with our Freeborn-Mauer Rural Electric Cooperative. They knew that I was going to get a chance, and their message to me was, if you get a chance with the president, stress how important it is that we get this disaster relief. And that's exactly what I did.
If we don't get a chance to see you again this week, what are your hopes and fears for the remaining weeks of the legislative session?
And this will be the last one.
Yeah, they're hopeful. I know that the legislature's on break. They'll come back and be very busy. I think a lot of groundwork has been laid for respectful relationships. I think I set the tone for them going into this break at the State of the State a couple weeks ago. I think on the way out the door, Senator Gazelka and Speaker Hortman both set the tone that my expectations are we will try and stick to these target dates. We will try and be able to agree upon numbers. I will say I am a little disappointed that the Senate left, and I have no numbers on transportation. I have no numbers on education. I have no numbers. They left without finishing those things. And so our plan has been out there with numbers down to the penny in every single aspect of state government since February 19th. And they've told us how horrible this is. And my answer is, what is your alternative? What is your alternative? Not to raise taxes is what they say. Well, what does that look like? They have yet to show us what that looks like. So my hope is that they get some clarity when they're right back. We finish that piece up by the end of next week. We're getting towards the end of April, that we can start talking about what the end looks like, try and set some targets, dates by the 6th of May, as we agreed upon early, and then do the work that we were sent here to do, negotiate in the best interest of Minnesotans, come up with a state budget that invests in the future, invests in education, health care, and the prosperity of our communities, finish that work by the 20th, and then go out and enact it. So that's my hope. I feel confident that we're there. There is plenty of time to get this done, and I just encourage folks to give us the numbers so we can negotiate on a fair and level playing field, and then let's all shoot for that May 20th is a date that we should try and get things done. So thank you all for being here, and if we don't see you, we're out on the road. I know we have Passover and Easter coming up. We wish you and your families all the best.